Assalamu alaikum ji, welcome to See Our Conversations. Today I've got hold of two young Pakistanis. ये नौजवान लोग हैं, जनरेशन Z हमसे बहुत नाराज है, जनरेशन Z बहुत नाराज है। वो कहती है कि बुढ़े बहुत गंदे लोग हैं और हम बहुत अक्लमंद लोग हैं। तो आज जनरेशन Z को भी हम जरा देखें ये क्या करती है। कल हमने एक डिबेट की थी जनरेशन Z के साथ, बूमर्स और जनरेशन Z। उसमें सारी जनरेशन Z डर गई और भाग गई। एक बंदा है जुरैन ज़मानी, जिसने आर्टिकल लिखा था बड़ा जोरदार। उसको मैंने पकड़ने की कोशिश की, वो आया ही नहीं। उसने कहा कि मैं नहीं आता। चलो जी, कमाल होगी, अगर नहीं आते तो क्या करें। तो आज जनरेशन Z के दो बंदे आए हुए हैं। सिया कॉन्वर्सेशंस, आप दोनों को मैं बता दूं, सिया कॉन्वर्सेशंस इज अ सिया फॉर सोशो इकोनॉमिक इंसाइट्स एंड एनालिटिक्स. This is our think tank. We want to start telling people what economics is and how to make economics useful for people. आप इकोनॉमिस्ट इतने साइडलाइन हो गए हैं कि आपको कोई नहीं पूछ रहा है इस मुल्क में। इस मुल्क में इकोनॉमिस्ट को उन्होंने जंक कर दिया। सिर्फ बैंकर्स फाइनेंस में लगते हैं और बैंकर्स हर पोजीशन पे आते हैं। और बैंकर्स आर्मी के पास हैं, बहुत क्लोज हैं, और बैंकर्स सिविल सर्विस के बहुत क्लोज हैं। एंड बैंकर्स डिसाइड व्हाट नीड्स टू बी डन। सो आई एम डूइंग दिस फॉर यू गाइस। मुझे कोई फायदा नहीं होगा, बट यू किड्स विल बेनिफिट इफ यू कैन शो दैट यू वर्थ इट। तो ओके फोक्स, मेरे साथ हैं जी कुलसुम हिसाम. शी इज़ अ यंग पाकिस्तानी who's done a PhD from Clark University and is, mashallah, now at Olaf College in Minnesota, doing very well in a very cold place and fighting for tenure. So, Kulsoom, all power to you, mashallah. We admire you, applaud you, very nice. Then I've got Asad Ijaz Bhatt Sab, who is, as usual, straddling the two streams, part economist, part civil servant. He's a civil servant at Harvard now. एंड इस पर भी बहुत लिखता रहता हूँ। सारे सिविल सर्विस को स्कॉलरशिप मिल जाते हैं, हार्वर्ड चले जाते हैं, वापस आके देखें ये क्या करते हैं। तो चलें जी folks, we'll start here. Kulsum Bibi, let's start with you. Let's start. What is your research right now or in your PhD? How does it inform us in Pakistan about what we should do about our problems? What can you tell us from your research about issues that are germane and applied to us?
Firstly, thank you for having me. So just to give an overview about the kind of work I do a lot of work on economic history and urban economics. So I look at a lot of historical data and a lot of geospatial data. So I work on a lot of historical maps. And basically how I use them is I'm interested to see how, for instance, infrastructure like road transit, road networks, transit canals, how they, for instance, shape long-run outcomes, how infrastructure and institutions shape long-run outcomes, and how they're affecting people before and today as well. So, for instance, one of my my job market paper was actually about streetcars in Chicago. So this was like early 1900s. So basically, I asked a very simple question. So for instance, if you are introducing a streetcar network in Chicago, the city is getting more cheaper and faster. Is it going to expand the city, and who is going to move away from the city towards the suburbs as a result of the streetcar? So for instance, definitely I do found that streetcars made commuting cheaper. I would like to add that I digitized a lot of old historical maps. I gathered like really comprehensive maps of the streetcar network in Chicago for like 3 years, 1900, 1910, 1920. I looked at its expansion over time. And basically, I guess my work is mostly rooted on looking at really granular level data. So for instance, I know, for instance, one person is living in one small neighborhood in Chicago. Are they living near the streetcar? Are they living far away from the streetcar? And so on. So basically, kind of an overview, what I find is that the streetcar helped expand the city. And at the same time, it is also generating spatial inequality. So it's actually the richer people who are moving further away from the streetcar network. So, they are living in suburbs and bigger houses, and it's actually the poor who is living near the streetcar in the city center. So in a way, why I would say that this is kind of, even though this is set in Chicago, historical, it can be used as a lesson for Pakistan because, like, for instance, cities like Lahore and Karachi, they are grappling with growth much faster than their infrastructure can keep up. There's a lot of traffic congestion. There's a lot of sprawling of informal settlements. So, for instance, what this paper is showing is that transit systems they do more than just move people. They're kind of shaping the city's economic geography. They are also
नहीं तो आप
creating a.
कुलसुम भी देखिए, हमने पाकिस्तान
Sorry.
में बना ली हैं ये चीजें.
Mhm.
We are, mashallah, building metros like there's no tomorrow. We are building
Yeah.
highways, we're building road networks. We, mashallah, the whole of Pakistan is very well networked by roads. I can travel from Islamabad to Karachi probably in 10 hours very comfortably, at high speed. लाहौर के अंदर, इस्लामाबाद के अंदर, सब शहरों के अंदर फ्लाईओवर धड़ाधड़ बन गए हैं एंड
Mhm.
मेट्रो बसेस भी चल गई हैं. नाउ व्हाट आर द implications of that? What from your research क्या लगता है implications है?
So basically, what I would like to say is I think the designing of the network is really important. We have to basically align transit where people actually live and work. So, for instance, एक paper मैं पढ़ रही थी IGC का working paper that is about the Lahore BRT and the effect of the Lahore BRT on women's labor force participation. So they're basically trying to find that okay, जब वो Lahore BRT आई थी तो yes, women की labor force participation did increase, but it did depend on wo kidhar transit station were they living near the transit station or were they living far. So in a way, it is creating spatial inequality. Quality. So women near the stations they are generating, they are improving their labor force, but at the same time, women who are not near the transit stations they are not being benefited in a way. And also, like for instance, in that paper, it also said that women are also concerned about the safety of the transit system. So I would say okay, the implications of this is try to at least find for instance, align transit networks in such a way that it is actually near the people who need that transit network. So let's say कि अगर metro ज़्यादातर गरीब
नहीं, आई
लोग
एम श्योर वो
इस्तेमाल कर रहे
कहेंगे
हैं.
हमने ये किया है, आई एम श्योर वो ये कहेंगे हमने किया है.
Yeah.
पर अगर औरतें हमेशा यही कहती रहे नहीं हम ये नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि इट्स डिफिकल्ट फॉर अस, तो हम औरतों का क्या करें? मुझे याद है जब मैं पुरानी फिल्में देखता हूँ अमेरिका के बारे में, शिकागो में जब आपने काम किया था, तो वो फिल्मों में औरतें जो थी, औरतें मूव करती थी, हॉस्टल्स में जाके रहती थी, अपार्टमेंट कॉम्प्लेक्स में रहती थी, औरतें होती थी. देवर ऑल काइंड ऑफ मैकेनिज्म. अब औरतों को भी तो कोई मेहनत करनी चाहिए ना, या वी शुड कॉन्स्टेंटली थिंक अबाउट मेकिंग थिंग्स इजी फॉर वेमेन.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to point out that in our society, women actually do want to work. Yes, I agree that there's this concept that say, women are maybe just
Are you
conditioned to
sure? I'm not so sure that women want to work.
there is a huge participation. I feel like the reason why a
Hmm.
lot of people think women don't want to work is because we're conditioned to believe that we should just be in the household. I feel like हमारी जो policies हैं gender inclusive नहीं है. If our policies were gender inclusive, if you're actually
है,
encouraging
है ये
women,
क्या टर्म है जेंडर इंक्लूसिव? मुझे तो नहीं समझ आती ये
gender
टर्म. ये आप डोनर
gen-
टर्म्स इस्तेमाल करेंगे मेरे साथ, मुझे कोई समझ नहीं आती जेंडर इंक्लूसिव क्या होता है.
gender inclusive in the sense that you are encouraging women, you are making policies that are friendlier for women to make them work. Just for instance, ठीक है आपने एक transit system लगा दिया, but for instance, if you are not making it safe, you're not making it safe for women, then obviously they are not going to use that transit system to go to work. So kind of create policies in a way that also facilitate women, especially in our society जहाँ पे crime ज़्यादा है, जहाँ पे like
क्यों
it's
असद साहब, डू यू एग्री विद दिस? मुझे तो ये बिल्कुल नहीं समझ आ रही बात. जेंडर इंक्लूसिव ये क्या होता है भाई? आई मीन वी आर जेंडर इंक्लूसिव, द वुमेन आर देयर ऑल ओवर द प्लेस. ठीक है, मानता हूं कि मर्द उनको तंग करते हैं, पर औरतें भी तो कुछ फाइट बैक करें ना. ये क्या बात है कि जेंडर इंक्लूसिव नहीं है, हैं? मैं आजकल रोज एक पंजाबी का वो देखता हूँ सीरियल जो आ रहा है टीवी पे. उस पे वो आ, एक औरत है ईरानी समथिंग और एक बंदा है, मैं उसका नाम भूल रहा हूँ. वो रोज लगे होते हैं and औरतों से लड़ी होती है, आदमियों से लड़ा होता है. जेंडर इंक्लूसिव है? असद साहब बताइए.
I mean, I do agree with the fact that I do agree with Nadeem Saab to the extent that things are changing and perhaps changing at a rapid pace, I would say. Female labor force participation rates. I mean, Nadeem Saab, I know you would say that numbers by the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics are fudged and you don't trust those numbers. But I mean, I don't have an alternate. I have to trust the numbers that the
ओके,
government
सो
gives me,
इन द लास्ट,
at least for
कितना लेबर फोर्स
observational
में
or
सेंसस ऊपर,
administrative data.
कितना लेबर फोर्स में ऊपर गया है फीमेल लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन?
I don't know. I don't work on gender, so I cannot say what the numbers were many years ago. But I do know for a fact, I've seen a few charts in recent times that the number has been improving across the world, just like poverty. I guess we've made
Across the world, yes, but we are very different. Look, we are Pakistanis. We have our own ways. We are very different from the world. We are not at one with the world. Yeah, please, ye to aap baat maan jaye. We are exceptional. There is the Pakistani exception that we have to believe in. Right?
Yes, I mean, I don't know in what ways we're exceptional, but there are people who say Pakistan is a resilient nation. People have written books about it.
Hard country, bilkul hard country.
Pakistan is a hard country, and
And
so
what did
on
he
and so
mean
forth.
by
So
that? What did Anatole Levin mean by that?
I honestly, Nadeem sir, if you ask me, I never understood what that meant. Maybe perhaps we've
Yeah.
endured a lot over the years. Maybe
Okay,
that's
Asad,
the case.
what's your research on? What are you trying to research?
So most of my recent work, by the way, before I start, I'd say one thing that I was expecting to ask Kulsoom questions and co-host this with you, but you've put me
Please
under the
do,
spot.
please do. This is a free for all. This is a free for all. There's no
But
rules here.
so I prepared tough questions for Kulsoom, but
Okay, go ahead. Why don't you start?
I'll
Why
answer a
don't you
few.
start with that? Then we'll come to you. Why don't you start with that? Then Kulsoom can do the same to you. Go ahead.
But I can talk about my
No,
the work
Pele, I
that
think it's a good idea for you to cross question Kulsoom. Then we'll come to you. Go ahead.
okay. Yeah, because I mean,
No,
it
good. I
was
think it's worth it. Go
yeah.
ahead. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
So just curious about your work, Kulsoom. Nadeem Saab asked the question of how it is relevant to Pakistan, but in a
Mhm.
US context, I know a lot has been done in terms of urban planning and local urban systems. What is the new thing that your research finds, and in terms of making it gender inclusive? I know I live in Boston. There's a lot of work on gender inclusivity when it comes to the Massachusetts Bay Transport Authority. There's a lot written about MBTA and public transport here as well. So what is the new thing that your research finds? And in terms of policy, how do you make public transport more accessible to women and make those spaces more gender inclusive, as you say?
Yeah, thank you. So basically, for my work specifically, I haven't really looked at gender. That was just something that, I
Was
thought
it?
of
Yeah.
like, and
I mean, it's a
yeah.
good segue. Yeah.
Yeah, so mostly, I guess I mostly look at urban planning. So, for instance, like my other paper is also on economic history in the US about like historical network of canals, which is still what I'm currently working on. But what I could say from my job market paper of Chicago is pretty much the only thing I can link it with Pakistan is to sort of align transit networks to where people live. So, for instance, if there are like a lot of poorer people that are using the transit networks, then you are supposed to make sure that wahan pe where the population density of the poor is much higher, try to align it with them so it's much nearer to the station. Also, there's like a lot of, for instance, people only living near the station are going to benefit. Jo log dur hai from the station, they're obviously not going to use the transit network. So it has to be really specific in a way that it is catering to the people who are living close to the station. And, for instance, if you are targeting women's labor force population, women's labor force participation, then the transit network should be especially in those areas jahan pe female population zyada high hai. So that's where the transit system
So is
should be
it
set up.
is it something like a spatial mismatch theory kind of thing? Is
Yes,
it?
yes,
Okay, so
exactly. And that
are
is,
you
yeah.
applying the spatial mismatch theory?
So for my paper specifically, yes, that is the conclusion that it finds that yes, there is a
Right.
spatial mismatch. Yes, the city is expanding, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, there's a spatial mismatch in economy. Some places, for instance, some businesses are going to boom up near the transit networks. Some places are going to lose in that aspect. Like for instance, there are many papers
Excuse me,
that
यहाँ मैं भी एक सवाल पूछना. What is spatial mismatch?
spatial mismatch in the sense that let's say economy is generating and it's booming in one area and it is declining in others. Crime is increasing in one area, declining in others. So for instance, जैसे कुछ cities में transit systems, they are not safe areas to walk in, crime वहाँ पे ज़्यादा बढ़ रहा है. So for instance, if you're building a transit system that is unsafe, maybe like a lot of criminals are going to shift over there and they're going to commit crimes over there. They're going to shift from one neighborhood to other.
But
So
मेरी
there's a
बात सुने,
big,
isn't this a dynamic situation? You build
yes,
a
it is.
transit system, then by definition, it'll shape the zoning in the city. Now,
Yes,
the
right.
problem in most places, in Pakistan, the problem is they will not change the zoning. They just want to build the transit system without changing the zoning. For example, Shahbaz Sharif has built these metro things in Lahore, but he has not planned or allowed the metro stops to develop upwards or to develop commercially. So if you keep the metro stop static, then by definition, it's not going to change. I mean, the space is not going to be created for people to move in. Ultimately, the way I look at this, when you build a metro system or a transit system, the nodes of the transit system, the stops, must become the nodes of living. They must be commercially oriented places. There must be dense spaces. There must be places where people have 10,000 flats, 20,000 flats maybe. Then you have what you're saying. Now, the question is, did Chicago, when you looked at it historically, did Chicago change the zoning or allow zoning to happen? Like in the sense, did they allow the transit stops to become nodes and move upwards and develop into dense commercial setups, mixed-use setups?
So I haven't looked at that aspect yet, so I don't think I'm like knowledgeable enough to say that. I'm like currently only working on streetcars. So zoning did happen, but it happened like further later, like around 1950s, 1960s. So for that, I don't know about.
So for the first 30, 40 years, there was static zoning. So when you have static zoning, by definition, there will be spatial mismatch, right? तो फिर अगर स्पेशल मिसमैच होगा तो वो तो सिटी प्लानर्स का कसूर है ना, नॉट द एंड जिन्होंने मेट्रो प्लान किया था उनका कसूर है ना. सो व्हाट काइंड ऑफ थिंकिंग वेंट इनटू प्लानिंग द शिकागो स्ट्रीट कार सिस्टम?
I mean, for this, usually it was more like it was replaced by horse car lines. So the first kind of transit system was horse car lines, and it was also it didn't it didn't have a lot of coverage in Chicago, so it was pretty much just replaced by electric streetcar lines. It was actually replaced first by cable car lines. Cable car lines is rather expensive the. It was really expensive to construct them. Speed was also a little lower. It was expensive to maintain them. Electric streetcars basically came because it was cheaper, it was much faster, and it was much affordable. So that was kind of the thinking that they did.
Nadeem Saab, spatial mismatch. Initially, I think the theory is a very interesting theory. It was more like an unemployment theory because so basically what it postulated was that in every big city, people live in one part of the city, especially people who are poor live in one part of the city, and the jobs are basically in just the other part of the city. And so basically there is that spatial mismatch. And so that's what so the theory basically postulated that you have to take the jobs where people live instead of creating jobs just in other parts of the city. That was spatial mismatch, but then it got applied to in the transportation sector context a lot as well.
Okay.
If I correctly understand it, but I've never
Go
used
ahead,
it.
Asad. Your next question.
So Kulsoom, historically, and I mean, Nadeem Saab is also interested in this. We would like to have your verdict on how you see public transport systems designed, and if you look at history and you look at cases like Pakistan, we're at a very rudimentary stage when it comes to developing like a public transportation system. Nadeem Saab mentioned metros, but I guess even metro in Lahore or a city like Lahore, or perhaps in a city like Islamabad, would not be covering more than 5% or 10% of all of the city's major routes. So do you think a country like Pakistan, first of all, at a very sort of early stage of development, should invest in big public transportation systems or build these white elephants? So you look at the history in the US and just answer this, and perhaps also, do you think that Pakistan's public transport system would also sort of go through this evolutionary process? And if you think that would be the case, what would that process look like?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth it to invest in public transit. I feel like it should definitely expand. There's a Lahore Orange Line. I also started working a little bit on Lahore Orange Line. There's still not like a lot of evidence about it because it started in 2023. But I feel like it created thousands of jobs. Ridership is high. The thing is, it's only connecting like a few neighborhoods of Lahore. If the thing is, if it would expand more, then people in the suburbs can actually use it to commute to work. So definitely it's much more better to expand the public transit systems, allowing more people to go to work. And obviously, in Lahore has like a big pollution problem. So this is just like a more environmentally friendly way to do it. And the thing is, the more we expand in public transit, the more problems that we know that we are facing. Okay, हमने public transit तो expand कर ली, but what are the problems that are having? Once we actually face, okay, we have the system, we have the problems, then only we're actually going to work on those problems that, okay, maybe we're not making it safer, maybe we're not making it affordable. So just by kind of expanding and then seeing how it is going, seeing how the people are reacting, how the people are responding, I feel like that is definitely a good way. And
But
especially,
Kulsoom, एक और भी problem है.
yeah,
Kulsoom, I don't think that you can have transit systems outside the center of city because I used to live in Hyde Park in Chicago, right? And Hyde Park was not connected to the center of the city, although it was pretty much center now. The center of the loop didn't come to the Hyde Park, or streetcar doesn't come to Hyde Park. You had to take a special bus to go from Hyde Park to downtown and then catch whatever public transit you could get. Same thing, you had to, if you wanted to go to Evanston. In fact, it was easier to get to Evanston than to Hyde Park. So the issue really is that, and this is the mistake I think we are making in Pakistan. हम लोग पाकिस्तान में कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि सारी सिटी कनेक्ट करें उससे. मैं जब वॉशिंगटन में फॉर एग्जांपल रहता था, तो आई यूज्ड टू लिव इन द suburbs of Washington. I was not connected to downtown. बस आती थी हर घंटे में एक दफा, तो घर हर घंटे में एक दफा तो ना आने के बराबर थी. ठीक है. तो द क्वेश्चन इज, ये भी हमें सोचना है कि सिटी सेंटर सिर्फ कनेक्ट हो सकता है, बाहर कनेक्ट नहीं हो सकता. और बाय डेफिनेशन पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट हैज टू गो टू नोड्स वेयर पीपल लिव. अगर के लोग रह रहे हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल डीएचए में जो लोग रह रहे हैं, दे लिविंग, मतलब अगर 1 एकड़ पे 100 बंदे रह रहे हैं, तो वहां तो पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट का फायदा कोई नहीं. आएगी कहाँ आएगी? तो इट विल हैव टू कम टू प्लेसेस वेयर आई हैव टू वॉक a mile to get to the public transport. So therefore, remember the last mile is always walking. So my cost of taking the public transport increases. तो इस पे भी गौर करें ना कि public transport can only be downtown, not inside, not outside. Or am I wrong?
that can be the case, but like in these days, you can see that the population is growing a lot. Lahore में भी, Karachi में भी बहुत population grow रही है. And the thing is, मैंने यहाँ भी सुना है, a lot of suburbanization is growing rapidly. Rents are getting much more expensive in downtown. Every day, every year, rents are getting more expensive in downtown. People are shifting to the suburbs. They have no choice but to shift to the suburbs. And traffic congestion इतना high हो गया है in the city center that subways are definitely a much more, not just efficient way, they're cheaper, they're affordable, they're definitely much more efficient. DC mein, for instance, it's just useless to own a car. I always use the metro. The metro is really efficient. New York mein, so it's impossible to just have it downtown because जैसे New York में आप rent like afford ही नहीं कर सकते. So it's just impossible. Like what about the people living in Brooklyn and Queens that are so dependent on the subway? So I feel like with the rising suburbanization, it is more and more important to have a subway that does connect them.
Are you saying that it's the transport system that has to chase the design of the city, or perhaps mimic the design of the city, or should it be the other way around?
Yes, actually mimic the design of the city. Like first see where people are kind of going, and then according to their needs, like transport should cater to their needs.
जो है, I mean, for example, people like Glazer and others who've done this work, they say that one of the reasons rents are high in downtown New York is because they do not give permissions to build more high-rises. I think Glazer has tied that very clearly to that. London, for example, property prices are high because they want to keep a low-rise city. So ultimately, population mostly, अगर आप urban economics कोई भी पढ़े, तो people जो होता है ना कि density, जिस पे आप कहते हैं congestion costs versus distance to the center, this trade-off plays urban economics basically. There's a trade-off कि I want to live close to the city, but then वहाँ city में close रहने का cost भी है. For example, I can't park my car, I can't own a car, वगैरह वगैरह, and I have to take the rush, I have to take the horns, etc. तो अगर वो है, और दूसरा ये है कि डिस्टेंस फ्रॉम द सेंटर, सो आई कैन गो 10 miles out of the city, but then I have to travel like I did in Washington. I hated it. Used to travel 1 hour every morning and evening. तो ये जो है इसको प्ले करने के लिए अगर सिटी सेंटर में, जैसे कि मैं आर्ग्यू करता रहता हूँ कि लाहौर, कराची, सारे शहरों में अगर ब्यूरोक्रेट्स बाहर निकल जाएं, एजाज के भाई अगर बाहर निकल जाएं और असद साहब के भाई निकल जाएं और हमें जगह दे दें ताकि हम वहाँ फ्लैट्स बना के रह सकें, तो आपके ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉस्ट गिर जाते हैं, कंजेशन कॉस्ट बढ़ जाता है, पर ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉस्ट गिर जाते हैं। पर ये लोग कहते नहीं, हमें अपने डाउनटाउन में घर चाहिए। तो ये बात जो है जोनिंग और ये रेगुलेशन और ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉस्ट से गो हैंड इन हैंड या नहीं?
Kulsoom, that's your question to
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like zoning laws have to be like they all go hand in hand. Like you cannot just expand the transit network while also not just changing the zoning policies as well. So definitely, I feel like all of them, they do interact. So
बट इसके साथ एक और भी चीज आ जाती है कुलसुम, वी ऑल्सो हैव टू ब्रिंग इन इकोनॉमिक्स टू। अब लंदन में दे हैव मेड श्योर दैट वी यूज ट्रांजिट, न्यूयॉर्क में भी हो रहा है थोड़ा सा। When you increase the cost of using the car inside the city, i.e. congestion tax या विक्री टैक्स, विक्री ने congestion tax प्रपोज किया था दुबई में, स्टॉकहोम में, पेरिस में, सिंगापुर में, अब न्यूयॉर्क में भी आ रहा है। तो congestion costs अगर हो, फॉर एग्जाम्पल लाहौर इज ट्वाइस द साइज ऑफ न्यूयॉर्क, Karachi 3 times the size of New York, and traveling in a car in Lahore and Karachi is free. Bulk it's subsidized because we built all these flyovers and what the bureaucrats have invented, a great bureaucratic invention, which is called a signal-free corridor. I've never understood that. Signal-free corridor is an extended roundabout. So it doesn't give you the benefit of the roundabout. It doesn't give you the benefit of a traffic light, but we are stuck anyway. पॉइंट है, जब कार को आप पार्किंग चार्जेस भी नहीं लगा रहे, कंजेशन टैक्स भी लगा रहे, तो फिर एवरीबडी विल ट्रैवल इन द कार। ठीक है, तो शिकागो में क्या उन्होंने पार्किंग चार्जेस साथ ही लगा दिए थे स्ट्रीट कार के, या नहीं लगाए थे? कब लगाए थे पार्किंग चार्जेस?
So at that time, जो like whatever I've done in my research, उस वक्त तो cars थे भी नहीं, so they came in like 1920s and so on. So mine is like a little before that. So at that time there were no parking charges. लेकिन फिर I did read that further on, the streetcar system was kind of declining. इसलिए तो decline हुआ. So streetcar was not just in Chicago, वो काफी North American cities में था. And then 1950 it eventually declined because there was just so much traffic on the roads. There was like heavy traffic, और फिर buses kind of overtook them. Buses were much cheaper and much faster in a way. So yes, then just because of the cars, it was kind of.
So then we've got 2 or 3 things that interact. We've got zoning, we've got where people live. Yani if
transport.
If you can allow me to live in a flat, I might give up my DHA house to live in a flat because I'm going to save on transport costs. But if you won't give me a flat, I have to live in the DHA, right? So quite frankly, वो हो जाएगा। नंबर 2, फिर आप मेरी गाड़ी को अगर टैक्स करेंगे, जैसे मुझे याद है मैं वॉशिंगटन में रहता था, so they had a lane next to my house called Route 66, just pay. They had high occupancy vehicle. You had to have 3 people in your car to travel, or you couldn't travel on it. ठीक है, तो उससे हम डिसिप्लिन हो गए. We had to find people to travel with, so I had to carpool. तो ये भी
Which
हो
is the
सकता
case
है.
in Beijing also, I understand.
हाँ बिल्कुल. और फिर ये आप कंजेशन चार्जेस लगा दें, स्पीड लेंस लगा दें, वो भी हो सकता है. तीसरी चीज एक और भी है कुलसुम बीबी, अगर आप ये लगा दें स्पीड लेंथ और ये चीजें कर दें, कंजेशन चार्जेस लगा दें, तो देयर इज समथिंग एल्स दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, वेरी क्लीन, वेरी नाइस, which is called bicycling. And now with e-bikes, it's very easy to bicycle everywhere, right? उसके साथ वो भी आ गया, वो जो इलेक्ट्रिक स्कूटर्स होते हैं, अब टेस्ला ने भी वो एक 1 व्हीलर इन्वेंट कर लिया. तो ये ऑप्शंस हमने जो असद के भाइयों ने जो चीज़ इन्वेंट की है, ये जो फ्लाईओवर वगैरह, अब इन्होंने they've taken care of the fact कि लाहौर में, कराची में हम कभी बाइक्स नहीं चला सकेंगे. We will be dependent on cars forever. इस पे भी तो बताएं ना क्या, what would you say on this, guys?
Nadeem Saab, I also have a question.
जी, go ahead.
Before Kulsoom.
Sure.
But I think how expensive automobiles generally are in a country like Pakistan, and given how expensive fuel is, and we keep talking about people's eroding purchasing power and affordability and so on and so forth. I think there's already a very large invisible tax in Pakistan to travel in cars, especially. I mean, not maybe perhaps in bigger cities, but where affordabilities are generally much higher, people afford big cars and fuel costs and so on and so forth. But generally, I think there is an invisible sort of tax to be on the road in Pakistan, but people are still driving, and it's completely beyond me why people needlessly drive in Pakistan.
Kulsoom Bibi.
The part that you said about bicycles, I completely agree with that. So I think a bicycle would be the most efficient, environmentally friendly way for transport. But the thing is, just in Pakistani cities, mein it's really difficult to actually enforce that bicycle culture because first of all, हमारे infrastructure सही नहीं है. Our roads are not like bicycle friendly. We don't have dedicated bike lanes for that. So maybe working towards having dedicated bike lanes, having just better road systems, I think that would be a better. I cannot speak to this if it will actually change this into a bike culture, if our city would be more friendly towards a bike culture, but I think that would be the best kind of approach that we see happening in a lot of the big cities.
पर देखिए बात जो असद ने की है कि tax, no, I think we are subsidized. Subsidized. For example, Asad, I have a bicycle here in Islamabad and I want to ride it.
Do you actually have one?
I have one. I can bring it out and show it to you. मुझे बताइए प्लीज कि मैं कहाँ चलाऊं? ठीक, सड़कों पे जगह ही कोई नहीं और अगर है तो मुझे कोई मार देगा. यूज कोस्ट थ्योरम. कोस्ट क्या कहता है? कोस्ट थ्योरम कहता है कि असाइनमेंट ऑफ लायबिलिटी. गाड़ी मुझे मार दे तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, कुछ नहीं होगा. लायबिलिटी उसकी कोई नहीं है, जीरो है. अच्छा, रोड पे क्रॉसिंग के कोई वो जीब्रा क्रॉसिंग है नहीं, और जीब्रा क्रॉसिंग अगर होती भी है तो उसका कोई रिस्पेक्ट ही नहीं है. एंड लायबिलिटी इज नॉट असाइंड टू द कार ड्राइवर कि जी अगर वो मुझे मारेगा तो वो साला $2 मिलियन देगा. आप ये लगा दें कि $2 मिलियन दोगे, नो क्वेश्चन आस्क्ड. मैं देखता हूँ कितने लोग गाड़ी पे खड़े नहीं होते साइकिल पे. ठीक है, तो आई थिंक अगर हम अपनी इकोनॉमिक्स भी यूज करें तो वी कैन सी प्राइसिंग इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग. देखिए, रोड इज अ पब्लिक स्पेस, और रोड को अगर आप प्राइस नहीं करेंगे तो बाय डेफिनेशन अब्यूज होगा. और अगर रोड आप ये सिग्नल फ्री कॉरिडोर बनाएंगे और ये फ्लाईओवर्स बनाएंगे तो गाड़ी को तो इमेंस सब्सिडी मिल रही है. बल्कि अब ये हालत ये होगी, आई कांट इवन वॉक. आई लव वॉकिंग. मैं यहाँ G64 में रहता हूँ एंड आई वांटेड टू गो टू द सुपरमार्केट व्हिच इज अबाउट 1.5 किलोमीटर्स. आई स्टार्टेड वॉकिंग. आगे से वो आगे अंडरपास, आई कुडंट वॉक. ठीक है, सो देन आई टुक द अदर अल्टरनेटिव रूट. वहां से मेरी डिस्टेंस 2 किलोमीटर और बढ़ गया, तो मेरी तो खत्म हो गई ना बात वॉकिंग. तो आई थिंक वी हैव टू टेक इन टू अकाउंट व्हाट आर द मोड्स ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्ट. ये हर कोई कहता है पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट होता है. यार पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट बाद में आता है, पहले वॉकिंग आता है. और वॉकिंग के अगर आप देखें, आप न्यूयॉर्क में साइड वॉक्स का साइज देखें, या आप किसी भी सिटी में, शिकागो में साइड वॉक्स का साइज देखें, रोड का साइज देखें, साइड वॉक्स आर ऑलमोस्ट ऑलवेज बिगर देन द रोड, राइट. एंड अगर आप बाइक लेन भी बीच में ला ले तो वो दे आर ऑलवेज बिगर देन द रोड, राइट. आपने यहाँ साइड वॉक तो मेरे लिए छोड़ी कोई नहीं है. आई हार्डली हैव अ 2 फुट साइड वॉक टू वॉक ऑन इफ एवर देयर इज वन. ठीक है, तो ये जो चीज़ है, हमने जो इसको प्रायोरिटी दे दी है स्ट्रीट कार्स को और बसेस को, आपने बेसिकली कह दिया है कि फिर एवरीबडी मस्ट बी सब्सिडाइज्ड. क्या शिकागो में सब्सिडाइज थे ये स्ट्रीट कार सिस्टम्स के? नहीं.
So it had a flat fare. That time that I was looking at, it was just a flat fare. I think
And
5
how
cents.
much was the subsidy?
It was a flat fare of 5 cents that I remember in 1900.
And
I'm not sure about
what
the
was the
subsidy.
subsidy that the city paid?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Because यहाँ तो there's a huge subsidy. I think if I remember right, the first metro that we had in Lahore was almost 2 billion, and now the next ones are much higher. तो ये भी एक मसला है. So there's lots to talk about in this area. Very good work, माशाल्लाह. असद साहब, आप कौन सा टॉपिक लाएंगे, बताइए.
Nadeem Saab, I just wanted to. I've recently got very interested, and a lot of questions that were coming to my mind listening to Kulsoom's work also, and the points that you raised has a lot to do with behavior also. And I guess a lot of people are publishing in experimental and behavioral economics now. And I wanted to raise this, that nobody does that. Literally nobody's doing that work in Pakistan. In fact, some Pakistanis, I don't want to name, some Pakistani professors outside are doing good behavioral experimental econ work. For instance, this e-bikes idea is a very, very good experiment if somebody wants to set it up to see if we enforce all the regulations that you're mentioning. People fixing liability, people stopping at the red signal or at the red sign, do people still come out with the bikes? Or do people start going, if somebody lives within 5 kilometers of their work, do they want to travel on bike if they have the infrastructure ready or in place? Now these are very, very good experiments. In fact, a lot of donors, Nadeem Saab, that you write about and you criticize, for instance, people like the IGC, are very interested in sub-Saharan Africa. I know they're doing wonderful experiments in countries like Zambia where they have big programs, but nobody's done those experiments in Pakistan. And I think there's a great room. So recently I've become very interested in doing those experiments in the health or education space. I mean, I do not have a ready proposal or a dissertation as Kulsoom does, so I cannot not really talk about
But
it.
let me ask you a question. Where is the need to do an experiment? I mean, एक तो मुझे समझ नहीं आती experiment जो हो गया ना. I mean, hey, the data is here. We've got the data. I mean,
There is no.
the world over, people are moving towards congestion charges. People are moving towards parking charges. People are moving towards making room for bicycles, electric skateboards, all kinds of things, right? If you go to any city, from Moscow to China to everywhere, wherever I've gone, I've personally rented bikes. I've tried to rent those skateboards, then I got scared. मैं गिर ना जाऊं, ठीक है? But they're available, and you put your credit card and you drive them and you go wherever you like and you drop it off, ठीक है? So these things are available all over the world and they're working. So please tell me, why do you need an experiment? I mean, let me put it to you this way.
Okay.
If you have a problem with your heart, do you need a Pakistani experiment to convince you that you need a heart surgery?
No.
So why do you need an experiment in this?
I don't need a specific Pakistani experiment, but I guess in this case, context matters. If your question was about the Pakistani context or why context matters in an experiment or for an experimental study, I mean, if I have to know what my heart health is, you would have to know how. I mean, I'm not a person well trained in medicine, but my dietary habits, what time I sleep, etc., is my context, and I guess that's where it matters. So if you run an experiment on my body, it has to, in some ways, sort of factor in my specific context as an individual, and that's where I think the country context matters.
No,
But I
exactly.
guess
We have to make sure that you fit the symptoms that we learned internationally, right? We learn from
right.
the international context, we take your symptoms, and then we prescribe based on the international evidence. So I'm saying the same thing कि जी यहाँ जो city है जो सब कुछ हो रहा है हम international evidence से सीखें और ना try करें because ये बड़ा I'm sorry to say ये bureaucratic excuse होता है जी हमारे context में ये बात चलेगी पहले आप pilot करें फिर आप experiment करें फिर हम चलेंगे अगले 20-30 साल तो गुजर जाएंगे तो मेरा घर तो छड़ा नहीं जाएगा ठीक है बात तो ये है ना कि मेरा घर और गाड़ी रखो
No.
इंटैक्ट अब मसला ये है कि मुझे तो नजर आ रहा है पूरी दुनिया में एक चीज चल रही है कि जी congestion taxes work and the parking works. Quite frankly, we could have saved hundreds of billions of rupees in terms of building flyovers and signal-free corridors if only we accepted these prescriptions. If we said, okay, congestion tax लगाओ, parking लगाओ, और इन सालों को bicycle चौड़ी करो, sidewalks, इनको को bicycle चलाएं, गाड़ियाँ ये चलाएं, पैदल आएं और ये करें, वो करें. I think we would have saved hundreds of billions of rupees. इसमें अब experiment करने की क्या जरूरत है?
Nadeem
No, I
sir, the
would.
thing is, yeah, go ahead,
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Kulsoom.
Kulsoom.
Sorry.
Okay, no, so I would just like to add, I do agree with Asad that context matters and experiment is important in a way because अगर आप एक policy design कर रहे हैं, you need to run an experiment to know that how people are reacting to it. मतलब कि every city, every neighborhood is going to act differently depending on the behavior of people, the culture of that. So you do need to, once you set a policy, you need to see how people are reacting to it. Is it doing more harm than good? Is it doing more good than it expected to be? So you definitely need an experiment.
Okay, then let me ask you a simple question. No experiment was done to build the metro. No experiment was done to build the flyovers. No experiment was done to build the bloody signal-free corridors. These people have increased my travel time. They've doubled it by making these things. मतलब सिग्नल फ्री कॉरिडोर जो हैं, कुलसुम बेबी, आई डोंट नो विच सिटी आर यू फ्रॉम?
कराची।
कराची। हाउ मच, नाउ यू टेल मी, ये जो सिग्नल फ्री कॉरिडोर बन गए हैं और फ्लाईओवर, आपका टाइम बचता है या बढ़ता है?
कराची में तो हर वक्त ही ट्रैफिक
ठीक है ना?
दिस।
द पॉइंट इज, ये लोग ट्रैफिक को कंट्रोल नहीं करते और ये लोग ये करते हैं, तो मुझे
या
बताइए प्लीज, उसके लिए कोई नहीं हमें चाहिए। जब हम कहते हैं को मॉडर्नाइज करो तो ये कहते नहीं एक्सपेरिमेंट चाहिए। प्लीज एक्सप्लेन दैट टू मी।
आई मीन आई गेस लाइक ठीक है एक्सपेरिमेंट नहीं हुआ था बट इफ वी डू डिफरेंट एक्सपेरिमेंट्स वी कुड हैव लाइक ट्राई टू एटलीस्ट लर्न फ्रॉम आवर मिस्टेक्स कि अच्छा हमने ये किया ये गलत किया वी शुड लाइक यू नो ट्राई टू improve things in this way and so on. So I feel like it's definitely important to try and see how things work out. You're
So
basically
if
learning
we
from
want to
it.
modernize, we should do experiments. If we want to spend money, we shouldn't do it. Is that right? जी असद साहब, is that what you think? Isn't that what the bureaucrats think? कि जी, and donors कि जी experiments करो if you want to do
I'm
something that is modern and well accepted. But if you want to spend money like mad, don't do any experiments.
Nadeem Saab, from the state having to run buses is more bureaucracy. The state having to redesign cities is more bureaucracy. Having lanes for e-bikes is more bureaucracy. Having people enforce the cost theorem is more bureaucracy. I'm in fact saying the other thing. I'm saying instead of involving the bureaucracy or bringing the bureaucracy in, or before you bring them in, rationalize the plans or policies that the bureaucracy today imagines in their rooms
Okay.
and then implements these mega development large scale projects that you and me both despise for
Okay.
different reasons.
Okay. Okay.
And I guess all I'm saying is that one, the micro data infrastructure in Pakistan is extremely weak. PSLM, HIAS are the two big surveys. We do not have much household level information. So one thing that experiments do is that they create those incentives for researchers to collect micro level information, which is extremely useful. And Pakistan, you know economists way better than I do. In Pakistan, micro level information is very scant. Economists don't do micro work. I'm not trained as a microeconomist, but I know that one thing that experiments do is that when you pilot them, they create the incentives for you to collect micro level information that can be useful for other studies also. And this is like one big limitation of causal studies that are
देखिए जी,
there.
now we got a ton of micro studies. In fact, अभी अली चीमा और लोगों का पेपर जेपी में आया है, telling us that if you improve women's transportation, they are more
Yeah.
liberated. Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, did I know that? Did my grandmother know that? I think yes. ठीक है. Now the question is कि कितना कब ये माइक्रो लेवल काम मेरे जमाने में होता था. For example, cost benefit analysis, which is very important, which was not done on the metro, which was not done anywhere. ठीक है. I think cost benefit is very important. We never do that. We are turning to experiments which are very expensive, which require $2-3 million to run an experiment. And then the experiment, as Deaton has pointed out, they are very context specific. They're not generalizable. They're not scalable. तो वो भी बड़ा problem है. We are not discussing experiments. इस पर बात ना करेंगे. अभी आगे चलें. What is the third thing that you'd like to discuss? Because we're running out of time. Go ahead, Asad, you or Kulsoom, please tell us something. No, let me turn this around a little bit. You got time, thoda. कि you people are young economists. You people are likely to come back to Pakistan and, mashallah, help us grow. Do you have any ideas on how to make Pakistan come out of the IMF trap? We've been in the IMF trap for the last 78 years. We've never come out of the IMF trap. We go from one program to another. And the economy is now, in fact, has been trending down throughout our history. Now it's down to about 2.73% of growth, depending on who you believe, whether PBS or somebody else. And unemployment is high. Again, depends on who you believe. Could be as high as 25%. We've checked, disguised unemployment वगैरह डालो तो 30%, 40% unemployment है. ठीक है? And investment is down to 8% GDP. So what would you guys recommend? You're the future of Pakistan. बताइए क्या recommend करेंगे?
So go ahead.
I mean, I'm not a macro person, so
Doesn't matter.
probably
It's not
not
macro or
mine.
micro. Tell me what you would recommend. Supposing the Prime Minister calls you in tomorrow and says, "Kulsoom, बताओ यार क्या करें?" तो आप क्या कहेंगे? कहेंगे, "I'm not a macro person. Come on, यार. Give me a break."
I mean, I feel like maybe just, I mean, I can give a general answer, just investing more in education. I would say this is like a very general, try to increase the labor force participation of women, trying to, again, I don't want to use the term gender inclusive, which that, it will be too contentious, but making more policies, because I feel like, and this is just something that I've also experienced in a way, ke, with time I'm realizing just a lot of women are going into higher education, especially जो यहाँ पे is in PhDs and they're applying for tenure track positions as well. ज़्यादातर लड़कियां हैं और लड़के कम पढ़ रहे हैं, which is kind of something that I have observed. So try to, because maybe make more policies that encourage more women to just say do jobs. Like you said, that women don't want to work, but actually maybe in the past women don't want to work because they didn't have the bargaining power to do so. But at least like now things are changing. They are working. I've been seeing a lot of women have been applying for really good jobs, PhDs and so on. So trying to shift policies in a way that is kind of making it easier for them to grow, because economic growth depends on us as well. It depends on women as well. So if you try to give more women the opportunity to grow, then that will be an important part of economic growth. This is like one general kind of micro argument that I can give.
क्यों ऐसा सब?
Nadeem Saab, I think this discussion is an important discussion. It should start from this question of why does Pakistan go to the IMF again and again? And I think this is a question that's not been answered very well, I think so, by Pakistani economists. We examine that program in a lot of detail. We examine the political circumstances that existed before when Pakistan went into any IMF program. But we've never really deeply examined. So for instance, some of the economists say that the twin deficit hypothesis exists in Pakistan's case. And our reason is that whenever we do this expansionary fiscal policy, Pakistan runs into a current account deficit because of a twin deficit hypothesis. And in those times, you have to go to the IMF. Other people say, and then of course we're chasing growth in those periods, and then we alternate between growth and stabilization periods, and so on and so forth. There are other people who say that the twin deficit hypothesis, and that is a big limitation of causal studies. That is exactly what I was saying. That deploying similar causal methods, there are so many researchers in Pakistan who've disproved the twin deficit hypothesis in the Pakistani case, saying it does not exist or it does not hold true or valid for the
Hey, ये
Pakistani.
कौन researchers हैं?
I'll send you papers.
Please send me some. I haven't seen it.
I'll send you papers who say that the evidence is inconclusive, basically. Now the big issue is that there's another problem, that there's some people in Pakistan who say you chase growth above 4%, or when growth is above 4%, the economy overheats and then it lends more to deficits than to growth. And so the only two policies that I've ever heard is, one, that you stop giving subsidies and you control expenditures, or you stop the PSDP. There is no third policy in Pakistan. And the third thing is increase taxes, which I know, Nadeem Saab, you're not a big fan of. So
Increase taxes for what? Why do you want to increase taxes?
No, I'm saying I'm not saying increase taxes. I'm saying that is
No,
these are
IMF
the
says
only three
increase
things that
taxes.
people generally quote.
Okay. So the IMF says increase taxes. Okay. So Kulsoom, what do you think? Should we increase taxes?
I don't know. I feel like I cannot speak on this macro. मेरी ज़्यादा macro knowledge इतनी strong नहीं है. I've always struggled with macro. But I mean, there's always, I mean, we can increase taxes if it's being used appropriately, which I don't think it probably is being used appropriately. If you are investing in infrastructure, if you're investing less in defense, more in education infrastructure, then definitely it is. But then knowing our system, I don't think that probably increasing taxes would be beneficial. It depends on how it's
देखिए,
being used.
education में हमने 260 universities बना दी. What has it done to our education system?
I mean, education में फिर भी कम है, defense में ज़्यादा spend हो रहा है बस.
नहीं, ये तो बात गलत है बिल्कुल. I don't agree with you at all. Defense तो जो है, defense तो हमें चाहिए यार. We live in a very bad neighborhood. We are totally insecure. We need defense. Defense को कम करना, I don't think is a choice. और अगर कर सकते हैं तो फिर quite frankly we have to try and think about giving up our sovereignty and other things. तो चलो मान गए. बट एजुकेशन में पॉइंट ये है कि एजुकेशन में 260 यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं. Did we need
Yeah.
260 universities? Right now, there are more people with degrees who are unemployed or badly employed or, whatever. So how much education? Dekhen, Victor, forgive me, I have learned to argue in Chicago. They told me to argue, otherwise there's no point. They've told me this is part of critical thinking, so I argue, yes, and people hate me for it.
Nadeem Saab, most of us have followed your Twitter, so you don't need to give that disclaimer.
आई नीड टू अपोलोजाइज फॉर इट. ठीक है. अब दूसरी चीज ये है कि मैंने जब गैरी बेकर के साथ पीएचडी की थी तो मुझे ये याद है कि वी यूज्ड टू वर्क ऑन समथिंग. आई डिड माय पीएचडी ऑन दिस टू रिटर्न्स टू एजुकेशन एंड पीपल इन्वेस्टेड इन देमसेल्व्स बिकॉज देयर वाज अ रिटर्न. पाकिस्तान में रिटर्न ही कोई नहीं. मुझे तो बच्चे जो बेचारे पढ़ रहे हैं, मैंने अगले दिन ट्विटर पे भी डाला था, मैंने कहा स्टॉप स्टडिंग यार प्लीज, गो डू अ छाबड़ी और समथिंग, गो रन समथिंग एल्स. ये यहाँ पढ़ाई का कोई फायदा नहीं है. वो पढ़ते हैं बेचारे, फिर जलील होते हैं, फिर बाहर भागते हैं, इमिग्रेट करते हैं, सोचते हैं वहाँ रहेंगे, फिर मेरी तरह बेवकूफ़ों की तरह वापस आ जाते हैं, फिर जलील होते हैं ब्यूरोक्रेट्स के हाथों, फिर हम रोते हैं बैठ के. पॉइंट ये, इधर रिटर्न टू एजुकेशन है कोई नहीं. हाँ, एक ही रिटर्न है, कुलसूम भी ब्यूरोक्रेट बन जाए, इम्तिहान दे दें, इफ़ यू स्टिल यंग इनफ, इम्तिहान दे दें और सारी ज़िंदगी याशी करें, वरना कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है. पीएचडी बहुत ब्यूरोक्रेट्स बैठे हुए पीएचडीज टू.
You're
I think the
selling
problem,
you're selling the Punjabi mantra to a Karachi girl.
No,
She
no,
won't take the CSS exam.
she
the
should because
problem
quite.
is कि हमारे पास ठीक है जैसे 250 कितने एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस होंगे. द प्रॉब्लम इज क्वालिटी ऑफ स्कूलिंग में आप
तो
हम लोग
क्वालिटी
इन्वेस्ट
ऑफ
नहीं कर रहे हैं.
स्कूलिंग,
लोग
क्वालिटी
50-50 पीएचडी के पेपर्स 50-50 पेपर्स पब्लिश करें एक महीने में. हाउ इज दैट इवन क्वालिटी? मतलब कि वी आर नॉट इन्वेस्टिंग इन द क्वालिटी ऑफ आवर, फॉर इंस्टेंस फैकल्टी, वी आर नॉट
what is
इन्वेस्टिंग इन क्वालिटी
quality?
ऑफ
What is
रिसर्च.
quality? What is quality?
Quality like research output, the infrastructure that you have in schools, faculty, like faculty with good experience, good sort of learning tools. आपके पास for instance good facilities हैं. So we are not investing in quality. ठीक है, आप मतलब कि 1000 schools खोल दें, but if you don't have quality institutions, if you don't have quality education, you don't have quality facilities, then it's not going to
नहीं,
really
लेकिन
benefit.
आप क्वालिटी की बात कर रही हैं, but there are lots of our kids that I meet. They say I've got 200 papers, yeah, and impact factor of 12 or 13, and पता नहीं क्या क्या statistics कोट करते हैं. वो तो कहते हैं
Yeah,
अचीव
and
क्वालिटी. अब क्या करें?
that's very suspicious because US में, like especially, I don't know about other fields. US में I don't know about other fields, लेकिन economics में it's really difficult to publish in a top journal. मतलब कि यहाँ पे it's unheard of कि लोग 50-50 papers publish कर रहे हैं एक गो में. Like it
नहीं, but
takes
वो
a lot
कर,
of rigor.
but they are doing it and they are right in claiming कि यार ठीक है, we've done it. बाकी ये quality क्या है? We have to discuss this, na? I think it's very
Nadeem
important.
Saab, but Pakistan's education problem is not, I don't see it as a higher education problem. I mean, we can talk about universities, but it's predominantly a school education problem. I've worked
Very
in the
good.
education sector for a bit. Just Sindh
Very
has,
good.
I think, more than 40,000 schools.
बिल्कुल सही कह रहे
The
हैं.
the biggest problem is that no one ever talks about in our primary school system is the absence of subject specialist teachers. Somebody trained in Islamiyat is teaching physics. Somebody trained in Urdu has a MA Urdu degree, is a class teacher teaching both math,
बिल्कुल सही.
chemistry, physics, all these subjects.
बिल्कुल
And
सही.
then the other problem is again something that Kulsoom's research could potentially cover is a massive spatial mismatch in the education sector, in especially Pakistan's bigger cities, because most of the school teachers, especially female school teachers, live in one district but are posted in another school district. And so they're constantly requesting the government to change their school. And when their school is changed, they're moved to a school where their expertise is Urdu, but an Urdu teacher already exists. And so they end up teaching physics or chemistry or Urdu. And so there is that subject mismatch
Very
that
good.
sort of starts
And why?
happening because of a
And
spatial mismatch.
why does that subject mismatch happen? ये पोस्टिंग कौन करता है?
So, of course, in Islamabad, the Federal Education Ministry does it. And they
in the
have
province,
the provincial education departments.
right? So it's the bureaucrats who do it. Hey, it's the bureaucrats who do it. right?
The pro
So the question is, how are the bureaucrats so enlightened and they know it so well? They transfer people, put a mismatch on, and then they tell us, oh my God, the quality is bad. Okay? Ultimately, it goes back to the bureaucrat. For example, I'm on record as saying we need to abolish the education department. We need to abolish the education ministry. We need to abolish the education secretary. We need to let the school system be independent and competitive on its own. Not this posting nonsense, not this nonsense about the army of teachers being, spaced left, right, and center by the Secretary of Education, right? So I think these
right.
problems have to be discussed and they have to be talked about. Ultimately, यही फायदा होता है. अच्छा देखिए अब बड़ी देर हो गई है because सुनेगा कोई नहीं इतना लंबा. We will do it again sometime else. Let's sort of stop here. I think we discussed two very important issues, three very important issues. In fact, rolled into all this, we've discussed the Pakistan governance problem. We discussed the Pakistan cities problem. We discussed the Pakistan mobility problem. I won't say transit, I would say mobility, because mobility also includes bicycling and walking and everything. And we've discussed the issue of education as well. But I think we've only started a superficial education. One of the reasons that I do these things कि ये हमारे रिसर्चर्स ये क्यों नहीं बातें डिस्कस करते और क्यों नहीं डेवलप करते. इनमें से किसी में एक्सपेरिमेंटल इकोनॉमिक्स की जरूरत नहीं है. बट वी नीड सीरियस वर्क. कि पोस्टिंग ट्रांसफर क्यों होती है भाई? पोस्टिंग ट्रांसफर जो है खत्म हो जानी चाहिए. और क्वालिटी की अगर बात करते हैं तो क्वालिटी डिपेंड्स ऑन द टीचर्स. एंड टीचर्स फिर हैव टू बी गिवन सम ऑटोनॉमी. ये नहीं कि सेक्रेटरी एजुकेशन उनके ऊपर बैठा हुआ है. तो ये भी सिस्टम की हमारी बात है. इसी तरह सिटी जोनिंग जो है, अगर लोकल गवर्नमेंट नहीं है और अगर लोकल गवर्नमेंट के रिसोर्सेज जो है वो सारे ब्यूरोक्रेट्स लेके बैठे हुए हैं, तो सिटीज़ भी नहीं तैयार हो सकती. अगर सिटीज़ नहीं तैयार होती तो फिर ट्रांसपोर्ट भी नहीं तैयार हो सकती. सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर टाइड इन. तो थैंक यू वेरी मच. इंशाल्लाह वी विल डू दिस अगेन soon. ठीक है? Let's keep it up.
Thank you,
Bring
Nadeem.
on more
Thank you.
people. Let's talk about it. The whole point is I want to get the Pakistani economists to talk to each other and learn from each other. That's what we are doing. Thank you, Kulsoom.
Right.
Thank you, Asad. All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank
Khuda
you, Kulsoom.
Hafiz.
Thank you, Nadeem sir. Thank you.